Okay, so again, the first topic for this subject this semester would be leases class. So we'll be discussing accounting for leases. And in this session, we'll just focus on the side of the lessee. So you might ask who or what is a lessee? It should not be, the idea of a lease class should not be foreign to you. Okay, we all have some level of understanding of a rental arrangement or a leasing agreement class. Okay, and basically that's the focus here. A party, an entity enters into a rental or a leasing agreement with another party. So first, we must understand what happens in this kind of transaction. So obviously, you will have two parties class, which we will refer to as the lessor and the lessee. The lessor would generally be the owner of the property being leased class, while the lessee is the one using the property of another. Now, are you in this class? So, on the part of the lessor class, why would a lessor agree? What would be the motivation or the consideration on the part of the lessor? Obviously, it would be in the form of lease or rental payments. The lessor will receive ordinarily cash from the lessee. And of course, the benefit on the part of the lessee is that the lessee will be able to use a property that it does not own. Okay, why would the lessee enter into a lease agreement? Again, because it will be able to benefit from an asset that it does not have to purchase class. So if you need an asset that is relatively expensive, uh, one option would be to enter into a lease arrangement. So again, the parties to a lease agreement would be the lessor and the lessee. The lessor is the owner of the property being used in the lease agreement, while the lessee is the one availing of the use of the asset. An exchange of the right to use the asset, the lessee is obligated to pay the lessor uh, rent or lease. But again, I'm expecting you to have an idea of what a rental or a lease agreement or arrangement is. But unbeknownst to you, there's a lot more things to be discussed when talking about accounting class. Okay. But again, our session today would focus on the accounting for lease on the from the perspective of the lessee. Okay. So from the point of view of the lessee class, you just try to imagine what would what would what assets on the part of the lessee would be affected. Number one, the cash. Why would the cash of the lessee be affected? Because as mentioned, the lessee will be paying the lessor regularly. And again, the payment would ordinarily be in the form of cash. Okay. And what is it that the lessee is paying for? Okay, what is it that the lessee is paying for? It would be the liability representing the agreed rental fee class. Okay. So again, very obvious to identify is that a lease agreement would affect the cash of the lessee. But again, why would cash be involved? Because the lessee would be paying its liability or obligation to the lessor. What obligation is this? And this is your lease liability. And this is the first thing that you have to remember, class. On the part of the lessee, if you enter into a lease contract or a lease agreement, the lessee will have to recognize a lease liability. And that is perhaps one of the most common question, class, on this topic if you're asked from the perspective of the lessee. The question is, what would be the initial lease liability to be recorded by the lessee? But again, what does that imply? That a lease agreement will result in the recognition of a lease liability. And that should be obvious. But the question now is, we have so many expenses, class. But why is it we only recognize the expense at the time that we will have to pay for the expense? Okay? Why can we not just accrue the expense related to the lease contract? Why are we recognizing a lease liability the moment that we enter into the lease contract? Even though what should give rise to expenses class. Normally, if you use an asset, you consume an asset, you pay for services, then the benefit that you get there would require the recognition of an expense, and if it's not yet paid, will require the recognition of a liability. On the part of a lease contract class, where will the expense come from? It's supposedly in the use of the asset. Because if you use the asset, because by using the asset, you are now required to make a payment. Okay, why will the lessee have a liability class? Because it used the asset of another entity. Okay, so it's the use of the asset class that should trigger the recognition of an expense. Okay? I hope you get my point. There has to be a transaction or an event or a benefit received that will recognize the recognition of an expense, and if the expense is not paid, will require the recognition of a liability. But here comes your lease contract class. Even if you have not yet used the asset, you are required to recognize lease liability representing your total obligation under the contract. Okay, but if I may segue a little bit, class. For example, your interest expense. What will give rise to interest expense, class? Supposedly, it's the passage of time. Okay, if no time passes, then no interest expense will accrue. And then you should not be recognizing any interest payable. Okay, applying that analogy, class, or logic to your lease liability, you have a lease liability because you are using the property of another entity. Okay, your obligation is to compensate that person, which is the lessor. So the question now is, what should be the trigger? It is the use of the asset. But again, what are we saying right now? Even if you have not yet used the asset, the moment you execute the contract, you should already recognize the lease liability. And what's the reason? The reason is the contract class. Okay? By virtue of the contract, your obligation becomes certain class. Even if you have not yet actually used the asset, by virtue of the contract, then you will have to recognize the lease liability. And the lease liability that you will have to recognize would be your total liability on the based on the contract. So even if it is to be paid next year, yes, included in your lease liability. Even if it is to be paid 10 years from now, yes, it is to be included in your lease liability. So even if you have not yet used it for 1 year, yes. Even if you have not yet used it in year 10, yes. Why? What's the basis or the source of your liability class? It would be the lease contract. And it is because the nature of the contract that we are dealing here, class, would be those that are non-cancelable. Okay? Does not make sense for us to be doing this if the contract is cancelable at the sole will of the lessee. Okay? And normally, the lease contract that we will be dealing with would obviously be not cancelable solely at the will or desire of the lessee. Because under the contract, you have an obligation, you will have to recognize the lease liability the moment the contract is executed. And that is why one of the most common question is compute for the lease liability. Compute for the initial lease liability. Okay? One common question again is compute for the initial lease liability. What other common questions can we have? Again, accounting from the perspective of the lessee. What would be the balance of the lease liability subsequent to the execution of the contract? Meaning, all balances of your lease liability, balance at the end of the first year, balance at the end of the second year, balance at the end of the third year, that can be asked in this topic. Okay? So again, the most common question here, one of the most common question would be the computation of the balance of your lease liability. If there's out of all the balances of your lease liability, the most common question that would be asked would be the initial class. Okay? And the concept is very easy, class. Every year you will pay 1 million and the contract is for 10 years. Based on your simplest logic, class, or your simplest understanding, how much will you end up paying the lessor, class? Throughout the contract, how much will you end up paying the lessor? You will be paying 10 million because by the end of the contract, you will be paying 1 million 10 times. Okay? So basically, your liability, class, would be 10 million. But the problem is, What concept do we use in accounting class? Starts with T, 3 words, TVM. Time value of money. 1 million payable 2 years from now is not the same as 1 million today. 1 million payable 5 years from now is not the same value as the 1 million as of today. So really, the initial balance of your lease liability class will be the present value of these 10 1 millions. Okay, so all you have to do is to get the present value of these 1 millions class, and that would be the initial balance of your lease liability. Okay, now, assuming lang for the sake of example, the present value of the 10 1 millions is 9 million. Okay, the present value of the 10 1 millions is 9 million. So the balance of your initial lease liability would be 9 million. Okay, after 1 year class, you pay 1 million. Why will the balance of the lease liability after 1 year will not simply be 9 million minus the 1 million that you are paying? Because the 9 million fully represents principal. Whereas the 1 million that you will be paying 1 year from now would be comprised of your principal payment and the interest payment. So what are you going to do? Split your 1 million payment between interest and principal. And what would be deducted from your lease liability? It will only be the principal component. Okay? Assuming the principal component of our first 1 million is 900,000. It is these 900,000 that will be deducted from the 9 million. Okay? And after 1 year, that would mean the balance of your lease liability is now just 8,100,000. What happened to the other 100,000 component of your 1 million payment? It would be recognized as an interest expense. Okay? Now, why are the problems not as easy as that, class? Because number one, the segregation of the interest in the principal class would not be, what do you call that? It will not be using closed figures class. Okay? And the amortization in the subsequent years will not be the same as the previous years. Why? Because what method will be used in amortizing your lease liability class? Starts with letter E, effective interest method class. Had the amortization method been straight line class, then the computation of your subsequent balance of your lease liability would be very easy class. But why does it appear to be difficult? One reason is that the amounts do not look good. They do not end in zeros. And why is that the case? Because we are using the effective interest method. But the concept really is very simple, class. Your lease liability is basically the liability that you incur as a result of the contract. Okay, but why is it not just the aggregate? Why do we not just add all the payments that is expected from us? Because again, we observe the concept of the time value of money. 1 peso today is worth more than 1 peso a year after. Okay. Next, for your subsequent balance of your lease liability, why is it not very easy to compute? Because again, we are using the effective interest method. Our payments will have to be segregated between the interest payment and the principal payment. And the segregation class, or the composition or the ratio between the principal and the interest will not be equal, because again, we are using the effective interest method. Under the effective interest method, class, you should know this already. Under the effective interest method, in the early years, what's the behavior of the interest component in your payments, class? Which one would be, when will the interest component be greater, class? In the early years or in the later years, class? Early years, because the balance of the liability is still high and the interest expense will be based on the outstanding liability. So again, the problems here will appear difficult because the amortization or the segregation or the breakdown of your payment into the interest component and the principal payment would not be equal, will not be uniform. In the early years, your interest payments would be, portion of your payments to be allocated to interest would be higher, but it would be decreasing. Whereas portions of your payments that are to be applied to your principal would be increasing, class. Okay, so the principal payments in the later years would be higher than those in the earlier years. But again, what's the source of the challenge, class? The source of the challenge is on the application of the effective interest method. And is this supposed to be the subject that will teach you the effective interest method class? The answer is no. So what's my point? Many of you would think that accounting for leases is difficult because of the effective interest method. Okay, you will blame this subject because of your difficulty in the effective interest method. But again, if the effective interest method is just clear to you, class, then this topic would not feel as difficult as it feels to many students. Okay, we've already discussed the perspective of the lessee. The lessee will have to pay. Why will the lessee have to pay? Because it will have to compensate the owner of the property. Why will the lessee have to compensate the owner? Because the lessee is using a property that is not its own. Okay, so it's just fair. So obviously, cash would be affected every time you make payment. But again, the most common item that will be asked here would be the balance of your lease liability. Okay, no difficulty on the concept as to why there is a lease liability. Why is there a lease liability? Because you will have to pay the lessor. You have an obligation to make a payment. But where is the challenge, class? It's in the determination of the amount or the balance of your lease liability. Because again, we simply do not aggregate all the payments that we are supposed to make. Since they are not paid upfront, you will have to get the present value of your payments. Which leads us to another new term, class, that is used in this topic, which is your MLP. What does MLP stand for? Minimum lease payments. Okay? So in our example earlier, I just oversimplified it, class, that your lease liability will just represent all the payments that you will have to make to the lessor. And that is basically what is your minimum lease payments, class. Your minimum lease payments are the payments that you will have to make to your lessor. But in our example, class, we have oversimplified it, class. We have limited your minimum lease payments to the annual or the periodic payments lang. But as you should have read, class, your minimum lease payments are not limited lang to the periodic payments for the rental of the property, class. What else can comprise or can form part of your MLP, class? What can form part uh, of your minimum lease payments? I hope you'll give me an answer so that I do not have to call you using your index cards. What else can comprise your minimum lease payments aside from the periodic payments agreed or stated in the contract? It's possible for you to include your BPO. What does the BPO stand for? Bargain purchase option. Okay, aside from your BPO, your minimum lease payments could also include your RV, residual value, but not all kinds of residual value. What will be included in the minimum lease payments of the lessee? Only the guaranteed residual value. Because again, how do I want you to understand your minimum lease payments, class? Everything that you're supposed to give to your lessor. So will that include the periodic payments? Yes. But why will it include the BPO? Why will it include the BPO? What happens in a BPO, class? Or again, what does BPO stand for? Bargain purchase option. What happens if there's a BPO? What does it mean? If you have a BPO, class, the lessee is given an O, meaning the lessee is given an option. And what is this option? To P, which is to purchase. But under what conditions? B, at a bargain price. So what happens in a bargain purchase option? The lessee is given an option to purchase the leased asset at a bargain price. Okay? So if ever the price stated, class, is not at a bargain price, class, will that be part of your MLP? No. Okay, so again, what happens if there's a BPO? If there's a BPO, what does that mean? The lessee is given an option to purchase the leased asset at a bargain price. Now, the question is, why will it be included in your MLP? If our understanding of your MLP is everything everything that is supposed to be given to your lessor. Okay, because again, everything that you're supposed or that you will possibly give to the lessor will form part of your MLP. So does that mean your BPO can result in a scenario that you will have to give something to the lessor? The answer is yes. And when does that happen? If you exercise the option. Okay, what does it mean if you exercise the option? You will purchase the asset. And will you be paying? Yes. But how much will you be paying? You will only be paying the bargain price or the discounted price. And since there's a scenario that you will be paying your lessor, then that will form part of your payments. Specifically, that will form part of your minimum lease payments. Moving on to your residual value. Again, how do I want you to understand your minimum lease payments? I want you to understand your minimum lease payments as everything that the lessee is supposed to give to that the lessee could give the lessor. Okay, we've already explained why the BPO will be included in your MLP. Why do you think the residual value will be included in the MLP? Again, what kind of residual value are we talking about here, class? The guaranteed. Okay, so why do you think that will be included in your lease payments? Because you have guaranteed the residual value, class, you now have an obligation to give the value of the leased asset to return the value of the leased asset to the lessor. The residual value is supposed to be the value of the asset towards the end, class. But if you have guaranteed its residual value, what if by the end of the lease term, its value is now zero? What will happen? You will have to pay the lessor for the guaranteed residual value. Okay? You're promising that regardless of the value of this asset, you will be getting this much by the end of the lease term. Okay? You're promising that you're basically convincing the lessor na lease the asset to me and do not worry that I will be the one making the most use of it because by the end of the lease term, I am guaranteeing the value of this asset. And because of that scenario, class, there's a possibility that you will be paying additional to the lessor. And that possibility will require the guaranteed residual value inclusion in your MLP. Okay? Why is it important for you to know the composition of your MLP? Because for what do you need the MLP? You need the MLP for the balance of your lease liability. Okay? So again, what are you supposed to do? Your lease liability is basically the present value of your MLP. Okay? Assuming you already know how to solve for present value, why would it still be crucial for you to know the composition of your MLP? Because if the amounts that you are getting, you're discounting, the amounts that you are trying to solve the present value of, class, is not correct, do you think that the present value, your total present value would be correct? The answer is no. So in the computation of your MLP in the computation of your initial lease liability, class, you have two challenges, class. Number one, determining your MLP, and number two, getting the present value of your MLP. In your MLP, again, it's just all that you're supposed to give to your lessor, which will comprise the periodic payments, the BPO, and the guaranteed residual value. Okay? That's the first challenge. And that challenge, class, is supposed to be learned in this subject. Okay, knowing the composition of your MLP is supposed to be learned in this subject. Okay? Again, it's not difficult. It's just your residual value, your BPO, and your MLP. And your periodic payments. And not all problems will even have BPO and residual value, class. Okay? The other challenge, class, in the computation of your initial lease liability would be on solving the present value. Okay, and how do you solve for the present value? Very easy. Multiply the cash flow with the present value factor. The cash flow here will just be your MLP. So what then would be the source of the second challenge, class? It would be on the computation of your present value factor. You will be using your present value lump sum factor. You will be using your present value annuity factor. and you could be using your present value annuity due factor. And the subject is this the subject that is supposed to teach you how to solve for your present value factors? The answer is no. So if you still have problems on the computation of your present value factor class, then expect that you will have problem answering problems under this topic. But what will end up happening? You will end up blaming this subject, blaming this topic for being difficult, when in reality the source of your struggle class is not the new concepts from this topic, but on your difficulty on the computation of your present value. And honestly, class, I cannot teach you how to solve for your present value factor using that kind of calculator. I only know how to solve for your present value factor using your scientific calculator. But if I'm not mistaken, the board exams has already re-allowed the use of scientific calculators class for the CPA licensure exam. Okay. But again, class, I'm not saying that you're not supposed to learn the present value computation in this subject just because I do not know how to use your ordinary calculators class. It's really the truth class. You're supposed to know the computation of your present value factor. Okay? And supposedly, if we had been using local textbooks class, your local textbooks would be giving you the factors already. But the textbook we are using, which was prescribed to you, will not give you the factors in advance. So you really have to solve for the factors. I can give you the formula class, but the formula I can give you will not work on your ordinary calculators. If we have time, maybe you can teach me how to use your regular calculators. Okay. But before the computation class, what's my point? Two crucial points to take care of class in the computation of your lease liability. Number one, correct determination of your MLP. And number two, correct computation of your present value factors. If you have correctly computed your present value factors and you have correctly determined your minimum lease payments, then whatever is the product would already be your initial lease liability. For the subsequent balance of your lease liability class, just your amortization. Multiply the initial balance of the lease liability with the interest rate, and that amount would already be the interest component. Deduct that from your periodic payment, and then you would be left with your principal component. And the principal component would be the amount that would be deducted from the initial lease liability. And you do that every year. Okay? But again, even the subsequent balance class, again, the challenge there is not on topics discussed on this subject lang. Okay, the crucial topic there is on the amortization class. Okay, or on the use or the application of the effective interest method. Okay. Before we proceed, I mentioned of an interest rate, very important. I hope you can give me the answer. What rate is relevant in the computation of your subsequent balance of your lease liability? Interest rate. What kind of interest rate? Implicit interest rate. And what is this implicit interest rate? The interest rate that is implied in the contract. Why do we say it is implied in the contract? Because it is the interest rate that would make the present value of your MLP equal to the fair value of your leased asset. Okay, the implicit interest rate is the rate that is implied in the contract. How do you determine the rate implied in the contract? It is the rate that would make the present value of your MLP equal to the fair value of the leased asset. Okay? But what ends up happening in the problems class? What ends up happening in the problems? You would be using the implicit rate to solve for the fair value. Again, what will end up happening in the problems is that you will be given with the MLP, you will be given with the implicit interest rate. And what will the problem require from you, class? You will be required to solve for the fair value of the leased asset. And how do you get the fair value of the leased asset? By getting the fair value of the MLP using the implicit interest rate. Okay? But why am I emphasizing that, class? Because supposedly the correct sequence of events, class, would be that the fair value is known, the MLP is known, and you just solve for the rate that would make these two sides equal. Again, the implicit interest rate is the rate that would make the present value of your MLP equal to the fair value. So among these three, class, the MLP, the fair value, and the implicit interest rate, it is the implicit interest rate that should be the last that will be known. Okay, you will need the fair value and the MLP to determine the interest that is implied in the contract. But again, what ends up happening in the problem? The MLP can be determined, the implicit rate will be given, but what will the problem be asking from you? You will be asked to solve for the fair value of the leased asset. Okay? But again, I want you to understand first, even though that will be the reality in the problems, class, I want you to understand that the implicit interest rate is the rate that would make the fair value equal to the present value of your MLP. Okay? So if we are to arrange the existence of this figure sequentially, class, the last one to be known should be the implicit interest rate. Because the implicit interest rate depends on the fair value and the MLP. Okay? But what ends up happening in the problem? MLP may not be directly given but can be determined from the problem. What can we expect is that the implicit interest rate is given. So these two will be given, and you will end up solving for the fair value of the asset. Okay. Now, why do you need to solve for the fair value, class? Because the fair value that you will solve will be the initial balance of the other element of the financial statements that will be recognized by the lessee in a lease contract, class. So we are now talking about another account, another element. First, we've already talked about the lease liability. What else will be recognized by the lessee, class, as a result of a lease contract, class? It is your ROU, right of use asset. And this is basically a concept. It's wrong to call it new, class. Okay, IFRS 16 has been around for a long time already. Okay, but the recognition of your right of use asset, class, was introduced with your IFRS 16. Okay, before IFRS 16, in a lease contract, class, the lessee will not recognize any asset as a result from the lease contract. But personally, I agree with the recognition of your right of use asset, class, because imagine, by virtue of the contract, you already have a liability. But also, by virtue of the contract, class, you have acquired a right to use the asset. But why was it not recognized before? Because it's very difficult to substantiate, class, because a right of use asset is not a tangible asset. You cannot see this. You cannot see this asset. What you have is only an invisible right, class, but a right nonetheless which you can enforce. And based on the definition of your an asset, class, an asset can come in the form of a right, class. Okay? But the problem is, it's difficult to prove the existence of this. Normally, one of the challenge in recognizing intangible assets, class, is the proof of its existence, class. But why is that challenge not present here? Because again, we have a contract, class. We are sure that this asset exists, that this right exists because of this enforceable contract. For the same reason that we have the liability, class, or the obligation by virtue of the contract, we also have the right because of this contract, class. Okay? But let's try to understand. How about before IFRS 16? Why didn't the lessee just recognize the asset it was leasing, class? Why can you not just recognize the asset it was leasing? Why is it not always correct to do that? Because number one, you might not be the owner of the leased asset class. Okay? Although ownership is not a requirement for recognition class, the easiest proof of saying that you have an asset class is if you have ownership over that asset. But again, in a lease agreement class, you do not become the owner class. But before PFR 16, there's a scenario class that you can already recognize the asset that was leased if it is to be classified as a finance lease. But erase everything. There's no need for us to talk about what was the scenario before IFRS 16. What's important is the now. Under IFRS 16, what's happening? The lessee will have to recognize a lease liability. Number two, the lessee will also have to recognize an asset. But the asset that will be recognized will not be the asset that is being leased per se. What will be recognized is just a right of use asset class. It's an asset nonetheless, but it is a form of an intangible asset. But again, please don't think that it is covered by PAS 38. Okay? Please don't think it is covered by IAS 38. Okay? I'm saying it is an intangible asset because it cannot be seen class. Just like your receivable. Okay? Can you see a receivable? The answer is no. But what does your accounts receivable represent? It represents a right to receive payment. Okay? But that does not mean that your accounts receivable is covered by PAS 38. Okay? Your accounts receivable is covered by what? PFRS 9. Okay? An accounts receivable is a form of a financial instrument. Okay, but going back to my point, what happens on the part of the lessee under IFRS 16? Recognize lease liability and recognize a right of use asset. And ordinarily class, if you just know how to compute for one of the two, you should also be able to compute for the other class. Why? Because ordinarily they will have equal or they will have the same initial balance. Okay? The initial balance of your lease liability would normally be equal or the same as the initial balance of your right of use asset. But why am I emphasizing that they will just be the same on the initial balance class? Why will they only be equal on their initial balance? Because how do you get the subsequent balance of your lease liability? What method do you use? You use the effective interest method. But for the subsequent balance of your right of use asset, what do you use, class? You normally use the depreciation method. And the depreciation method may not be the same as may not result in the same the depreciation method may not result in the same depreciation that is equal to the amount of amortization. For example, if the depreciation method that will be used will be straight line, then the balance of the asset will be amortized equally, class. Okay? But initially, your right of use asset and your lease liability should have the same balance. And how do you compute for that amount? Just get the present value of your MLP. So two commonly asked questions. Number one, compute for the initial balance of the lease liability. Number two, compute for the initial balance of the right of use asset. These are the two commonly asked questions, and their answer will normally be the same. Again, why would you still get it wrong? Because number one, you may get the MLP wrong, and number two, you might get the PV factors wrong. Let's start with the first one. Is getting the MLP wrong excusable, class? The answer is no. Why? Because again, it's just your periodic payments, your BPO, and your residual value. Will the periodic payments normally be given? Yes. Will your BPO be normally given? Yes. The problem will say that the lessee is given a BPO at this price, and that's it. Next, residual value. Will the residual value normally be given? Yes. So, the first source of your error will just be the determination of your MLP, but in more cases than not, class, and in most cases, the composition of your MLP will already be given. So what would be the reason that you would get it wrong? You simply did not practice class. You simply did not try to encounter as many problems as you can. You simply did not expose yourselves to these kind of problems. And that is why, to me, it's not excusable for you to get your MLP wrong. Okay? What was the second source of your error in answering for your lease liability and your right of use asset? Your present value factor. Is this excusable, class? Still no, nothing is excusable, class. No error is excusable. Why is it not excusable? Because you're supposed to know this already even before entering college, class. Am I correct to say that? Did you have investment mathematics already in senior high school? I doubt that's true, class. You should have investment mathematics already. STEM. Okay, assuming you did not have investment mathematics class, will it be excusable? Still no. Okay, you should have learned this already in the previous 3 semesters class. Okay? Maybe in first year, second sem, excusable pa. But at this point, it's no longer excusable. Okay, if we are going to excuse it at this point, then you should not have passed IA1 and IA2. Passing IA1 and IA2 presupposes you already know the time value of money concept class. Okay? Will that be everything on the side of the lesson? Okay, so the scenario is like that on the part of the lessee class because under IFRS 16, all leases from the perspective of the lessee will be treated as a finance lease. Very important theory. I think it's commonly asked because it's a distinction between the old and the new treatment for leases. Under the old standard, the lessee may be accounting for a lease either as an operating lease or as a finance lease, depending on whether the criteria are present. The same for your lessor. A lease can be accounted for as a finance lease or as an operating lease under the old standard. But under the new standard, again, it's wrong to call it new. Under IFRS 16, from the perspective of the lessee, everything would be a finance lease. Okay? Operating leases would be simpler. We do not have to use the time value of money concept. Even grade schoolers can understand operating lease. Okay? But you don't have to have regrets on that. Okay? Everything should be finance lease from the perspective of the lessee. Okay? But even having said that, class, I hope you've read from the standard that the standard provides for an exemption. The standard says, account everything as a finance lease except what? 2 scenarios, class. Short term, meaning less than 12 months, and low value, class. If the amounts involved are low, class, then you do not have to use finance lease. You may use some other treatment which would end up being just your operating lease. Okay, but more on that as we discuss the illustrations. I thought we'll be able to finish everything, including the problems by now. Very quickly lang. Let's try to answer the exercises, not the one I assigned to you. The brief exercises. Is that everything to remember for lease, the perspective of the lessee? BE 21.1, brief exercise 21.1. Again, this is not the one I assigned to you, but please open to this page, class. Page 1144. Samson leases a building and land. The lease term is 6 years and the annual fixed payments are 800,000. Are you there? BE 21.1. The lease arrangement gives Samsung the right to purchase the building and land for 11 million at the end of the lease. Based on economic analysis of the lease at the commencement date, Samsung is reasonably certain that the fair value of the leased asset at the end of the lease term will be much higher than 11 million. So do we have a BPO in this problem class? Yes, because the option price is 11 million, but we expect the value at the end of the lease term to be higher than 11 million. What are the total lease payments in this lease arrangement? What is being asked? You're asked to determine your MLP. You're not even asked to get the present value class. You are just asked to determine which ones will comprise your MLP. And is this difficult, class? Class. Is this difficult to answer? Say no, class. No, because again, what will comprise your MLP? Periodic payments. What else? And BPO and residual value. As I've told you, not all these three would be present all the time. Okay, so what's our answer? How much is the periodic payment? How much are we supposed to pay annually? 800,000. And how much is the BPO? But why is the answer not 11,800,000? Because the 800,000 is to be paid how many times? 6. So the total MLP will not just be 800 plus 11 million. It would be 800 times 6, which will give you how much? 4,800,000. And then you add 11 million. Your total MLP would be 15,800,000. And was that difficult? No. And if you were asked, how much is the initial balance of your lease liability? What are you supposed to do? Just get the present value of your 6,800,000 and your 111 million. But in getting the present value of your 6,800,000, you can use annuity factor, while for the 11 million, you can use the lump sum factor because you only pay for the 11 million once. Next, BE 21.2. Figure company leases equipment for 8 years with an annual rental of 2 million per year or 16 million in total. General Leasing agrees to provide the company with 300 for the first 2 years of the lease to defray needed repairs to the equipment. Determine the undiscounted lease payments that the company will pay for the first 3 years of the lease agreement. Okay, how much is the periodic payment, class? How much? 2,000. Okay, but what's the agreement here? The lessor will be what's the term? What's the good term here? Will be subsidizing, class. Will subsidize how much? 300. So basically, the net amount would be 1,700. And how many times will we be paying that? 2 years. Okay, 1,700 in year 1, 1,700 in year 2. And then what will happen in year 3? No more incentive, correct? So how much will be paid? 2,000. So 1,700 plus 1,700 plus 2,000, that will give you 5,400. That will already be the answer. Next. The question here is, what is the undiscounted lease payment amount Sander should use to record its right of use asset? Okay. Sanders enters into lease arrangement with High Point, leasing for 5 years. Sanders agrees to pay 4% of its net sales as a variable lease payment. Sanders does not pay any fixed payment. Sanders is a highly successful company that has achieved over 1 million in net sales over the last 7 years. Both Sanders and High Point forecast that net sales will be a much greater amount than 1 million in subsequent years. As a result, it is highly certain that Sanders will make payments of at least 40,000 each year. What is the undiscounted payment amount Sanders should use to record its right of use asset? Very important theory class, which we have not mentioned. The answer here will be 0. Variable payments will not be included in your initial lease liability and your right of use asset. They will only be recognized once they can be determined, class, meaning as they occur. Okay. So what will happen? The lessee will have to make payments for these variable payments, but the payments will be recognized or reported as an expense when they are paid. Next problem. A journal entries already. Okay, let's just answer this one. Waterworld leased equipment from Costner beginning on December 31, 2021. The lease term is 4 years and requires equal rental payments of 41,933 at the beginning of each year of the lease, starting on the commencement date, December 31, 2021, which coincides with our reporting date. The equipment has a fair value at the commencement date of the lease of 150,000. What is this 150? Fair value. The appropriate interest rate is 8%. Prepare the entries in 2021 and 2022. Because why is this problem easier than normal class? Because the fair value is already given. Normally, how are we supposed to solve for the fair value? You get the present value of your MLP. Why do we say that the present value of your MLP is the same as your fair value? Because again, your initial right of use asset will just be equal to your initial lease liability. Okay? So what would be your first entry on December 31, 21? Debit the asset and credit liability. What asset? Debit right of use asset and credit lease liability in the amount of 150,000. The problem now is we do not know how much our MLP is. Supposedly, what's the normal flow of the problems, class? MLP will be given, implicit interest rate is given, you use these two to get the fair value. But what happened in this problem? Is the implicit interest rate given? Yes, the appropriate interest rate is 8%. Oh no, given there. Everything is given. So no reason to get this wrong. How much, what else will be recorded on December 31, 2021, class? What else will be recorded? You record the payment. Why are we recording payment even if this is the commencement date? What did the problem say? Payment is in advance. What did it say? Requires equal rental payment at the beginning of each year, starting on December 31. But is that common, class? The answer is no. Okay? Normally it would be at the end. Okay, so as normally you will only be preparing one entry, class. Debit, right of use asset, and credit, lease liability. But here, you will be preparing a second entry to record the payment. And this entry should not be confusing, class. Okay, what are we doing here? We're making a payment. And every time we make a payment, what ends up happening? We will be crediting what? Cash. So your only problem now is to determine what will be debited. And normally, what will be debited? Whatever it is, whatever we are paying for. And what are we paying for here? We are paying for your lease liability. So the second entry would be debit, lease liability, and credit. cash. And this now leads to one tricky question, class. You would be asked, what is the balance of your lease liability on December 31, 2021? Ordinarily, what would be our mindset? If we are asked for the balance on the commencement date, what would be our answer, class? It will be equal to the initial lease liability. And what is your initial lease liability? The present value of your MLP, which would also be equal to the fair value of the asset. Do you follow? But why will the answer, class, not be the present value of your MLP if you are asked how much is the balance of your lease liability on December 31, 2021? Because payment was already made on this date, class. Okay? So your answer should not be 150,000. You should deduct the payment. But again, what did I say about the payment, class? What's the challenge when you are asked for subsequent balance? You will have to split the payment into the interest component and the principal component. But if the payment is in advance, do we have to do that? No. If the payment is in advance, everything will be applied to the principal component. So the entire 41,933 will be deducted from your 150,000. So if you are asked, how much is the balance of your lease liability on December 31, 2021? It should not be 150. It should be 108. How much, class? 108,067. Now, in your seats, please compute for the interest expense to be reported on December for the year 2020 2022. How much will be the interest expense in 2022? Normally, how do you solve for interest expense? Just multiply the implicit interest rate or the applicable interest rate with the balance of your lease liability. And if it's the first year, normally you will just use the initial balance. How much was the initial balance of the liability? 150. So do we multiply 150 by 8%? No, because the balance that will earn interest is not the 150. It is the, how much was it? 108,067. You multiply 108,067 by 8%, and that will give you how much? How much? 8,645. And that is the answer to what question, class? How much is the interest expense to be reported in 2022? Next question. How much would be the balance of the lease liability on December 31, 2022? What could affect the balance of your, how much was the balance last year, class? 108,067. Do we expect its balance to be different after 1 year? The answer is yes. Why? What will happen? There will be another payment. How much will we be paying? Still 41,933. Are we going to deduct the entire 41,933 from the 108,067? Since last year, we deducted the entire 41,933. Are we going to deduct the entire 41,933? No, because what are we supposed to do? Split the 41,933 between the interest component and the principal component. How much is the interest component, class? 8,645. Deduct 8,645 from 41,933. 33,288. And that will be the amount that will be applicable to your principal. So that is the amount to be deducted to your outstanding balance. How much was the outstanding balance? It was not 150 anymore, class. Very important to remember. It was 108,067. How much is 108,067 minus 33,288, class? How much? 74,779. I do not have the correct amount, so I will just have to trust what you've given me. 74,799. 779. 74,779. Last question na lang, class. How much will be the depreciation expense? Okay. Is there a depreciable asset here? Yes, the right of use asset. Okay? How much was the initial balance of your right of use asset? How much? 150. And then to be amortized or depreciated, how many years? Just 4 years. And what method is to be used? The easiest method, which is straight line. So what do? 150 divided by 4. So that will give you 37,500. Now, because of these transactions, do you expect the lease liability at the end of 2022 to be equal to the balance of your right of use asset at the end of 2022? The answer is no. They both started at what amount? 150, but subsequently they will no longer have the same balance. Do you follow, class?